There is a popular belief going around that Jesus is supposed to return within one generation of the return of the nation of Israel. Although this is a popular belief, I believe that it has several major flaws that make it completely untrue. Jesus does not have to return in our generation. In fact, he doesn't have to return anytime soon if he doesn't want to. The passage that mentions this fig tree generation is in Matthew chapter 24, starting in verse 32. From the fig tree learn its lesson. As soon as its branches become tender and put out its leaves, you know that summer is near. So also when you see all these things, you know that he is near at the very gates. Truly I say to you, this generation will not pass away until all these things take place. Heaven and earth will pass away, but my words will not pass away. According to most prophecy teachers, the fig tree in this passage represents the nation of Israel, and therefore Jesus is saying that he will return within one generation of when the nation of Israel is gathered back to their homeland. Since this happened in 1948, we can understand that he will return within one generation from 1948. Now, maybe you have heard this idea and even believed it yourself. However, I would ask you to reconsider this idea based off of a few considerations. Firstly, fig trees don't necessarily represent the nation of Israel. Now, to the credit of these prophecy teachers, in Matthew chapter 21, a fig tree is used to represent the nation of Israel. However, in the Old Testament, this is not so clear-cut. On the screen, I have the instances in the Old Testament where either a fig tree or figs or fig leaves are used in a symbolic sense in the Old Testament, and in the vast majority of situations, it has nothing to do with the nation of Israel. If you were to ask an ancient Jew alive during the time of Jesus about fig trees, they wouldn't automatically think of the nation of Israel. There wasn't really sort of a strong connection there. So, although we are told by prophecy teachers that fig trees always represent Israel, this is not true. We just believe it because it's been repeated over and over enough. Additionally, according to the Gospel of Luke, which describes this same instance, Jesus said, "the fig tree and all of the trees." As Mike Winger puts it,
yeah, this is not Jesus. It's not, the issue isn't that it's a fig tree. The figginess of the tree is not... Figginess of the tree is not the thing that establishes what Jesus is talking about. When he's like, what you're going to look for, it's not about it being figgy. It's about the timing. As soon as they put forth leaves, you see it and know for yourselves that summer is now near. You know how trees blossom around summertime. That's the point. It's not so much about it being a fig.
Clearly then, the fig tree does not represent the nation of Israel. Also, 1948 would not be a candidate for the regathering of the nation of Israel because, according to an ancient Jewish mind, a partial regathering of Jews to the land of Israel would not be enough to qualify as the end of the exile. As Mike Heiser puts it,
and that is what a Jew would really have been thinking. We need to be united as all 12 tribes. 12 tribes, our destinies are tied together. We all need to be brought back into the land. The Lord has to return to Zion. The Spirit of God has to return, to us.
Another major problem for the idea that we are the fig tree generation is that Jesus did not say that generation will not pass away. He said, this generation will not pass away. And every single time Jesus uses the phrase, this generation in the Gospel of Matthew, it always, without exception, refers to the people who were alive at the time. And this passage should not be interpreted differently. It is because people are afraid of the natural reading of this text that they force it to be about some future generation. But if we interpret Matthew 24 consistently, and if we interpret it honestly, then we must come to terms with the fact that Jesus is talking about people who were alive at the time. This generation always includes the people who were alive at the time. And to interpret it differently here, rather than every other instance, is not because the text compels us to do so, but because we are afraid of Jesus being a false prophet. Now, because of this, a lot of Christians known as preterists have come along and said, well, actually, all of the things that Jesus described in Matthew 24 did happen in his generation. They all happened by 70 AD. Now, many futurists who don't want Jesus to be either a false prophet, yet they're also not comfortable with preterism, then try to push this to be some future generation. However, when they do this, they are contradicting the way that they themselves understand this exact same word in every other situation. And they have no warrant here for interpreting it differently. Now, I myself don't think that we are stuck with preterism. It's not the only option here. In a future video, I'll explain some other options. But for now, suffice to say that it is impossible for Jesus to be describing some future generation down the road. Yet this is not the only passage that is often misread by honest believers. In this video, I describe how Romans 9 is very often misunderstood by both Calvinists and Arminians. So if you want to understand Romans 9 in its original context, then click on this video to learn more.